قبل من قد علمته أنك علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك، وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله واجعل يا رب رزقك لي واسعا ومطلبه سهلا ومأخذه قريبا، ولا تؤنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا، فإنك غني عن عذابي وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله وجد على عبدك بفضلك إنك ذو فضل عظيم. اللهم صل على محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا إله إلا الله إلها واحدا ونحن له مسلمون. لا إله إلا الله ولا نعبد إلا إياه مخلصين له الدين ولو كره المشركون. لا إله إلا الله ربنا ورب آبائنا الأولين. لا إله إلا الله وحده أنجز وعده ونصر عبده وعز جنده وهزم الأحزاب وحده، وله الملك وله الحمد، يحيي ويميت ويميت ويحيي، وهو حي لا يموت، بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا للمرتضى، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم حسن المجتبى، السلام عليكم حسين الشهيد الكربلاء، السلام عليكم ولي زين العابدين، السلام عليكم محمد الباقر وجعفر الصادق وموسى الكاظم وعلي الرضا ومحمد التقي وعلي الوكي والحسن العسكري. السلام عليكم على صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليكم قابة الإيمان وإمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان، أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. सही बारे खुशनूदी मौजमाना बुलंदतर सलावात أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليه السلام بنت رسول الله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت عليك السلام قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليمني فغطيته به فأتيته بالكساء اليمني فغطيته به وصرته أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله اللهم صل على فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جدا يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء قال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي قد أذنت لك فادخل معه تحت الكساء اللهم صل فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال لي يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه السلام عليك يا من اختار الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك فادخل معهما تحت الكساء اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكسام فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيم وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء فقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومى بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم، ولا حرم لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم، إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. ما صل على. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مذيعة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، قد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم قد أذنت لك، فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء. فقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. ما فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال النبي ثانيا يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، وفيه مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. صلوات.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. हासिल जिसे आका की हुजूरी हो जा, हासिल जिसे आका की हुजूरी हो जा, दुनिया के गम رنج سے دوری ہو جائے۔ اے صلی اللہ مجلس پر نور حسین، اے صلی اللہ مجلس پر نور حسین، ناری بھی یہاں آئے تو نوری ہو جائے۔ حاصل جسے آقا کی بآواز بلند بار دیگر صلوات۔ اسی بہتر انداز میں بآواز بلند بار دیگر صلوات۔ جب رہا شام کے زندان سے ہوئے اہل حرم، کیا خوشی ہوتی دوبالا ہوا سادات کا غم، جس کو ارمان رہائی تھا ہوئی وہ بے دم، ایک ننھی سی لحد پر تھا مسلسل ماتم، سن کے فریاد و فغاں سانس رکی جاتی تھی، ارے قبر سے والی سکینہ کی صدا آتی تھی، وطن جانے والوں مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو، مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو، مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو، میں کیسے رہوں گی یہاں پر ہے، میں کیسے رہوں گی یہاں پر، یہاں ہے چلو، مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو، رہا ہو کے گھر جانے والوں، مجھے بھی کہیں پر بٹھا لو، شہیدوں کے سر ہیں جہاں پر، مجھے بھی وہیں پر سلا دو، میں بابا کے سر سے لپٹ کر ہے، میں بابا کے سر سے لپٹ کر سفر کاٹ لوں گی یہ سارا، مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو، مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو، نہ یوں چھوڑ کر جاؤ اماں مجھے شامیوں کے سہارے، یتیمی کی ماری ہوئی ہوں، یتیمی کی ماری ہوئی کو ستایا بہت ظالموں نے، بہت خوف آتا ہے مجھ کو ہے، بہت خوف آتا ہے مجھ کو تمہیں واسطہ سیدہ کا، مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو، مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو، سنا ہے کہ واپس ملے ہیں تمہیں شمر سے میرے گوہر، بھلا کیا کرو گے تم ان کا، اگر رہ گئی میں یہاں پر، انہیں بھی امانت سمجھ کر ہے، انہیں بھی امانت سمجھ کر یا دفنا دو زندان میں، یا مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو، مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو، یہی سوچ کر زیر تربت تڑپتا ہے دکھیا کلاشا، مجھے شمر کے شہر میں اب ہمیشہ ہی رہنا پڑے گا، دھڑکتا نہیں پھر بھی اماں ہے، دھڑکتا نہیں پھر بھی اماں، یہ دل کانپ جاتا ہے میرا، مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو، مجھے بھی وطن لے چل، یہ حالت تھی ہر ایک قدم پر، مدینے کے راستے میں اکبر ارے گری تھی جہاں پر سکینہ تماچے لگے تھے جہاں پر وہاں خاک سے قیدیوں کو ہے وہاں خاک سے قیدیوں کو صدائیں یہ آتی تھی ہر جا مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو مجھے بھی وطن لے چلو فاتحہ اللهم صل على محمد پہنچے اسیر شام سے چھٹ کر جو کربلا تسخیر ہو چکا تھا ہر ایک سخت مرحلہ اترا جو بار سر سے تو یاد آئے آخرب ایک ایک مرنے والا نگاہوں میں پھر گئے دل میں گھٹے ہوئے تھے جو ارماں پڑے اشکوں کے ساتھ دل کے بھی ٹکڑے نکل پڑے اشکوں کے ساتھ دل کے بھی ٹکڑے نکل پڑ کوئی تڑپ کے بولی کہ اکبر کہاں ہو تم چلائی کوئی قاسم میں بے پر کہاں ہو ایک ماں صدائیں دیتی ہے اصغر کہاں ہو زینب پکاری عابد مزتر کہاں ہو بیٹا نہ دل پا بس نہ قابو ہے صبر پر للہ لے چلو مجھے بھائی کی قبر للہ لے چلو مجھے بھائی کی قبر پر بولی لپاٹ کے قبر سے بھیا میں آ گئے بھیا سنا میں شام تلک پہ داغ بھیا سکینہ ہم سے نگاہیں پھرا نکلی نہ قید خانے سے موت اس کو کھا گئے بچی تو رو چکی تھی بہت تھک سو گئے لیکن وہ ماں کی گود جو ویران ہو گئے لیکن وہ ماں کی گود جو ویران ہو گئے بھیا ذرا رباب کی حالت کو دیکھیے کیسی اداس اداس ہے صورت تو دیکھیے دل خوں زباں خاموش ہمت تو دیکھیے ہر کام مرگ تازہ قیامت دیکھیے دکھیا پہ کیسے کیسے مسائے گزر گئے وارث بھی سر سے اٹھ گیا بچے بھی مر گئے وارث بھی سر سے اٹھ گیا بچے بھی مر گئے اس وقت کچھ عجیب تھا عالم رباب پر گردن جھکائے بیٹھی تھی دنیا سے بے خبر شانہ ہلا کے بولے جو زینب چشم یک لخت جیسے چونک اٹھی دیکھا اٹھا کے یک لخت جیسے چونک اٹھی دیکھا اٹھا کے بس اتنا کہہ سکی کہ بہت دن گزر گئے آئے تھے ساتھ باپ کے اصغر کے دھر گئے آئے تھے ساتھ باپ کے اصغر کے دھر اس نالے رباپا محشر بپا ہوا عاشور کا سما تھا نظر میں کہ چاہ ہوا ہر آنکھ میں تھا چہرہ اصغر بسا ہو گودی میں جیسے باپ کا منہ دیکھتا ہو گودی میں جیسے باپ کا منہ دیکھتا ہو قبر حسین قرب سے ترا کے رہ گئے پرچائی جیسے موت کے لہرا کے رہ گئے پرچھائی جیسے موت کی لہرا کے رہ گئے پہنچے اسیر شام سے چھٹ کر جو کربلا
السلام علیکم مومن امنات برادر انیس اور ان کے ساتھیوں کی صحت و سلامتی کے لیے ایک باواز بلند صلوات پڑھیے مومن امنات یہ مجالس کا سلسلہ جو 20 ستمبر شروع ہے انشاءاللہ یہ 25 ستمبر یعنی 25 ستمبر تک جاری رہے گا اور ان مجالس سے مولانا سید اسد جعفری صاحب خطاب فرمائیں گے کل اسی سلسلے کی مجلس کی جو مجلس ہے وہ وفات رسول خدا صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی وفات کے حوالے سے اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل مجلس ٹھیک نماز مغربین کے بعد شروع ہو جائے گی اور اسی طرح سنڈے کی جو مجلس ہے جو کہ 25 ستمبر کی ہے وہ بسلسلہ شہادت امام حسن علیہ السلام اللہم صلی علی محمد اس سلسلے میں ہوگی اور ان دونوں مجالس کے بعد شبیہ تابوت اور نظر کا اہتمام ہے تو آپ سب لوگ پابندی وقت کے ساتھ شرکت فرمائیں یہ مجالس ٹھیک مغرب کی نماز کے بعد شروع ہو جاتی ہیں ہمارے جو آن لائن ویور ہیں اور جو ہمارے انگلش لسنر ہیں ان سے بھی گزارش ہے اور یوز سے بھی گزارش ہے کہ پابندی وقت کے ساتھ شرکت فرمائیں مومن امنات میرے پاس کچھ نام ہیں جنہوں نے ریکویسٹ کی ہے کہ وہ اس سورہ فاتحہ کی ایک دفعہ سورہ ہم پڑھ کے اور 3 دفعہ سورہ اخلاص پڑھ کے اپنے مرحومین کے لیے اور جن مرحومین کے میں نام لے رہا ہوں ان کے لیے اور شہداء اسلام کے لیے ارشاد فرمائیں سید محمد عباس son of مرزا محمد علی خان عبدالستار مستری مرحومین آف سید اظہار خزل باش مرحومین آف سید کرار نقوی مرحومین آف علی رضوی مرحومین آف سید اسد رضا رضوی مرحومین آف سید عباس رضوی مرحومین آف میر عرفان مرحومین آف قمبر رضا مرحومین آف قمبر علی فاتحہ और मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम। वहाँ से गुजारिश करूँगा कि तशरीफ लाएं। आवाज़ बुलंद सलावत।
There's been a request for Dua Shifa, inshallah, for those who are in need. Anyone that you know who may need, please include Mahmoud Uncle, Mahmoud Rizvi, inshallah, and others who are ill, inshallah. Please join me 5 times reciting Amma Yajib. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibul mustarra idha da'a wa yakshifu as-su'. عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. صلوات على محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون، الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا، سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وآله وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، صاحب العصر والزمان، خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان، ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واستعينوا بالصبر والصلاة فإنها لكبيرة إلا على الخاشعين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد. The relief of salat has been our ongoing topic, and tonight is our 4th discussion of 6, inshallah. As announced, I am with you until Sunday, and the weekend is filled with our Tabut Majalis. The attempt that has been made for the past 4 nights has been revolving around the idea of looking at our daily prayers through a different lens, moving away from the fiqhi and the jurisprudence discussion and looking at it beyond an obligation or, God forbid, a burden. In the process, looking at it through a coping mechanism in this very trying world. And thus, holding true how the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sorry, I need a better salawat than that, please, if you don't mind. Thank you. When he would ask Bilal to give the adhan, he would not ask him, Bilal, give the adhan. It's time for salat. He would say, Bilal, relieve us from this world. And the Holy Prophet saw the time for prayer, the act of prayer, the worship of prayer, to be a relief from this world. And we mentioned that this is not a discussion on fiqh. I'm not up here giving you Tawzil Masal rulings, but rather it's a discussion on the pillars of salat and how each act of worship and each act inside of salat now can bring about a sense of relief. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. And we talked about the idea that we focused on three major arkan of salat, three major pillars of salat. And yes, in fiqh there's 11, I know, and there's 5 that are untouchable. But really, at the level of spirituality, there are 3 major actions in salah: qiyam, ruku, sujood. This is the crux of salah. Everything else, from the bihawlillah to the sami Allah to all these, are either preparing you for those acts, or they are a muqaddimah, or they are a preliminary act for these 3 major acts. This is really now where the ulama of spirituality, ulama of irfan, talk about the fact that in these 3 pillars, we find relief. And we've been breaking down these 3 to the best of our ability, and we said that when these 3 are done properly, they become the encompassing picture of La ilaha illallah. We described how. We said that when you bow down in ruku to the point where the Prophet would bow down, not wajib, it's mustahab, he would bow to the point where he was so straight and he was so low that a drop of water would be in the middle of his back, and that drop of water would not fall from the right or the left side. It's mustahab to what? To look at your turba when you are in ruku, meaning what? Your head is slightly extended when you are in ruku, offering yourself in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Claiming in this action that there is nothing inside of me that I'm attached to beyond you and your path. And so bowing, what that does is it removes, Imam Khomeini says, all the ilahs inside, the small g gods inside of us. Someone who is an egomaniac, someone who is a narcissist, somebody who is conceited, somebody who is in love with themselves. They don't bow down in front of anybody. They might do a quick little salam like this, but bowing in the ruku only happens when the idols of the ego are broken inside of you. So that is the la ilah. And then when you rise up from that ruku and now you're ready to really enter the ruh of salat, which is sujood, at that moment there is no ego, there is no ana, there is no barriers, there are no obstacles. Now you're ready to enter the nothingness of sujood. Whereas I said last night, you are nothing in sujood. You can't see your face, you can't see your body, things are hidden. You become one in sujood, to the point where we mentioned briefly yesterday that even those tools that we use on our body for sin, from our feet to our knees, to our hands, to our arms, to our eyes, to our nose, to our head, to our heart, all of them are at the level of dirt beneath us. Announcing the fact that I am now taking all of these abzad and tools I have for sin, and I'm lowering myself in front of you. That's why the ulama of irfan say, if you can't find God in sujood, you won't find God anywhere else in salat. And that's why it's at the end of the rakat, not at the beginning of the rakat. Allah says, first have your niyat, stand before me, know why you're standing, recite my surahs, bow down, claim Allah. Remember, I talked about takbir being what? The open palms towards Qibla. Allah, I'm coming at you empty-handed. I have nothing in my hands, nothing up my sleeves either. Everything I'm dropping, I'm coming to you in complete and absolute need. It becomes an encompassing picture of La ilaha illallah. And in that now comes our relief. Because when you go through that exercise 5 times a day, and it may be a big statement, and you'll tell me if it is. When you go through that not once a day, 5 times a day, strategically placed throughout the day, before you start the day, in the middle of your day, at the end of your day, at night, you go through that up and down, La ilaha illallah, the stress, the anxiety, the depression of this world becomes minute in front of you. Becomes nothing in front of you. And I'm not suggesting that, as I said now 3-4 nights in a row, that this is the only solution for your anxiety and stress. No, the verse that I've been constantly now reciting for you, Surah Baqarah, says it's not just salat. وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. Seek assistance, get your help through patience and through prayer. So prayer is one of them. But the faster we move away from salah being a burden, my young guys, the faster we understand there is relief in these obligations Allah has now put down. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The other point I have to emphasize before I move on to tashahhud is the fact that our image of God has to be a little bit better than it is. I've been mentioning that up and down my Muharram lectures. That we do believe that Allah understands that I have placed you in asfal as-safilin, the Quran says, the lowest of the worlds. He also understands that He's placed test after test after test in front of all of us. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We created the human being in the cradle of distress. God's very open. There's no delusion here. It's not like He's surprised that all of us are going through our difficulties. In fact, He says very openly, the higher you go, the more difficult this world becomes for you. It becomes a prison for a mu'min. And the higher the iman is, the more tight the prison becomes. Now, if we understand that God understands that about us, and we claim that God is a loving, merciful, compassionate, graceful Lord, how can we think for a minute that these obligations that God places on us are burdens? I mentioned that for men, there's never a moment that you can't pray salah. Never a moment. Unless, of course, you've lost control of your intellect. If you are, let's say, for example, in a coma, you don't need to make up that salat while you were in coma. That wasn't wajib on you. But if you can't move your limbs, for example, not able to bend, only you can move your eyelashes and your eyes, at that moment salat is still wajib on you. Drowning in the ocean, wajib on you. Attacked by an enemy, wajib on you. In the middle of a war, wajib on you. And this is not meant for God to say, look, I like the fact that I'm burdening you. Look at you struggling, I love it. A better example of that. If God is going to place us asfal as-safilin, He is going to give us the tools to get to asfal as-safilin. He wants us to be successful. And sometimes He does it to the point where, look, if I leave it up to you, you may never get there. Let me make it an obligation for you. Let me make it so that you have to do it. Eventually, by doing it, you'll understand the purpose behind it. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That brings me to tashahhud. Now we have done sujood, and now we're up from sajda. Before that, I will do my best, inshallah, to explain the idea that we're traveling from wahdat to kathrat, and what that means, inshallah, in a moment, not yet. One thing that we have to understand, I have to understand, not all of you, is the idea that salah and this act of worship. I ask my young guys who've been here every single day, and may God bless you. There's school nights, and you guys are here. You guys are amazing. It's so inspiring. I know that right now, whether or not you're entering high school, first year university, graduating year, or whatever, you're in a new school perhaps, a new classmate, a new teacher, whatever. There's stress and anxiety in the new academic year. And we have to learn to embrace that and not run from it. And Allah has placed tools in front of us. He's also placed a realization in front of us through this act of worship. And that realization is His eternal nature. Let me explain. We claim Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is eternal, meaning that He doesn't fluctuate like I do. And the reason why the ulama now, quick sort of aqaid, Tawheed 101 lesson for my young guys. The reason why the ulama have broken down the sifat of Allah, the attributes of Allah, into categories. Jalali, Jamali, Af'ali, Zati. Is not, of course, to break Allah down into pieces, God forbid, but for us to understand Him a little bit better, where we can apply and be God-like, and where that's remained for Him. So ulama say, for example, His sifat dha'tiyah, at the essence level, God is knowledgeable. He's essentially qadir, all-powerful. He's essentially alive. He's hayy. That life is not like mine. That power is not like yours. The knowledge is not like yours. We can't claim to get to that level. But His sifat fi'aliyah, the ones that He acts on, Him being merciful, Him being a razik, and Him being somebody who provides, Him hiding your faults, Him giving you respect, Him loving you, for example, Him forgiving you to the point where the sin never happened. Those are all His fi'ali attributes. Those are all action-based. That's where we can, to a 0.001%, mirror him, become like him, the ray to the sun, like I always say. That's why we have this breakdown, not for any other reason. And one of the breakdowns is this idea that Allah's attributes are part of his essence, not separate from who he is. Why is that important? And how is that connected to my topic tonight? Let's relax, let's open up our hearts, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You see, fluctuation happens when the attribute is separate from the individual. One day I wake up and I'm patient, the next day I wake up and I'm impatient. One day I wake up, for example, and I'm ignorant, the next day I wake up and I become knowledgeable. Or maybe a year after, 2 years after. This man used to be like this, what happened to him? This man was always like this, mashallah, now look what happened to him. Before Hajj, he was one way, after Hajj, he became another. We as a human beings, we fluctuate constantly to the point where sometimes we can't recognize ourselves. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened to me. That's not who I don't do it usually. I apologize, that wasn't me, bro, my bad. It's my bad is killing me. My bad. My bad. Why am I doing this? How did I become like this? What's wrong with me? You're fighting yourself. Your fluctuation, you yourself don't understand. Because your attributes, my attributes, are not attached to my essence. My attributes can fluctuate, but I don't change from being Asajaf. One day I can wake up ignorant, I can wake up impatient, I can wake up angry, I can wake up, I don't know, calm, I can wake up all these fluctuating attributes, but my essence, who I am, doesn't change. Doesn't change, because they're not connected. In the sense that my essence is not defined by my attributes are not defined by my essence. Okay? That's why I'm fluctuating. And that's why this world is also fluctuating. The seasons in life, the weather, for example, climate change, you name it. All these things are the qualities of this world and this universe. We live in a very fluctuating world, from inflation to the economy, to the climate, to individuals, to animals, to species, you name it. That's the reality of creation. You come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and please follow me. Believe me, I'm going somewhere with this. I know it's a boring discussion, but stay with me. You come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's the complete opposite. You'll never find him one day unjust, the other day just. One day, for example, where he should be merciful, he is not. One day where he should be vengeful, he's not. One day where he should be this, he's this. What happened to God? Yesterday he was fine, now he's somebody different. No. His attributes and his essence are one. He is justice, justice is Allah. He is merciful, rahmah is Allah. He is, for example, razik, his raziqiyat is Allah. Khaliqiyat is Allah. Doesn't describe Allah, he is Allah. That's part of him. You can't separate him. The example I give in my class all the time to my young guys is the saltiness of salt. Salt, its essence is it's salty. Namak jo hai, the essence is salty. If you take out the saltiness, you can call whatever you want. You can't call it namak anymore, salt. What defines salt is its saltiness. You can add sugar, you can add this and that, call it whatever you want. Sweet salt or salty sugar, I don't care, but you can't call it salt. At a very, very low level, that's my example. Go a little bit higher, which means Allah is the only eternal entity in this world. A non-fluctuating entity equals eternity. He's always been like this, he will always be like that. It's not like 20 years from now he'll change. 40 years ago he was somebody different. Can't recognize you, God. Aapko kya ho gaya? But to us, all the time. Right? What happened to him? Physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, you name any aspect of my existence, I can fluctuate all the time. My spirituality, my physical take, my beard, everything has changed. God, however, is eternal. And salat is the reminder of the eternity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We constantly remind ourselves, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la. He is the greatest, he is the highest. With his power, I stand up. He listens to the one, Sami Allahu liman hamida. right? He's the one that I say every single day, 10 times a day, Maliki Yawmiddin. He's the one, Iyyaka na'budu. He's the only one. When you establish God to be the only eternal entity, everything else that you are and you experience becomes temporary. Please follow. Please follow. So in the world of theology, and you've heard this istilah before, he becomes a wajib, you become the mumkin. He becomes the necessary, you become the possible. I become the possible. And dare I say, every creation in its essence is there is a fluctuating nature. So you can't say that this creation has always been there. You can't. There was one moment where it wasn't, now it is. What brought it from isn't to is the wajib al-wujud. He's eternal, nothing else can be eternal. If you have two eternals, one eternal depends on the other to make two, and that becomes dependency, and that's mahal in eternity. Okay? Quick 101 Tawheed. Why is that important with our topic? Once you establish God's eternity, and you establish the temporary nature of everything you are and you experience, my young guys, my sisters on that side of the building, anyone right now who can't sleep at night, anyone right now who has a constant pit in your stomach, anyone right now who's raising a newborn baby, just got married, just went through a tragedy, just came back from Karbala, mashallah. All these things are right now, fresh right now, either stressful or exciting or brand new or spiritually or this and that. All of it is what? Temporary. The only eternal is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The moment you recognize the eternal, everything else becomes a temporary. When it becomes temporary, you don't get too high and you don't get too low. The season will pass. You too shall get through this. That's why Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, look, it's Friday night and Isbai knows me. I'm just warming up now, please. So if you're going to stay with me, I need a nice loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I have loads of energy tonight. Muhammad wa ala Muhammad salawat. I talked about the idea that we go through our seasons of life. And Imam Ali now describes the idea of detachment, and the only way that Imam Ali knows how to do it. He says the essence of detachment in this world, and that's what I want for me and for all of you. The stress you go through, the anxiety you go through, the mental health problems that all of you are going through, or I'm going through, or my family is going through, or my loved ones are going through, or my friends are going through, know that against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of it is just a season. It's going to pass. You're going to get through it. Provided you get through it with one hand on eternity and one hand on your problem. That's why salat is so important. It's a relief. Imam Ali says the crux of this detachment is from the Quran now. Don't get too happy when you attain what you've attained, and don't get too upset when you've lost what you've lost. It's the balancing act. Sometimes we think that right now I'm at rock bottom, Asabay. Right now things are going very difficult. Just entered high school, just got married, you name it. All I'm surrounded by is dirty diapers and a baby that won't let me sleep at night. I'm trying to listen to Asabhai right now online, and I can't because he won't stop crying. And by the time he's sleepy, then so am I, and I missed the whole majlis. When will this change? Will it ever change? I'm always going to be, that season will pass because it's not eternal. Nothing is eternal but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to remind her, look at Allah now, He knows that this insan is so ghafil, so forgetful. He says not once, not twice, 5 times a day. Remind yourself, go back, go back, go back. Not for half an hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, I told you. It's not the idea that Allah wants you on top of a mountain, in a cave, some basement, some random center, let's say. No, Allah wants you to find that in your 9 to 5. Find that in your family life. Find that in a society of kathrat, of multiplicity, and find that wahda. That's why when you rise up from sujood, you're rising from the world of unity into the world of multiplicity. Let me explain. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If I'm yelling, I'm not angry, I promise you. I'm just excited. This topic, mashallah, this is the deen. The deen is beautiful. The deen is beautiful. Allahumma salli ala. Please, you don't need to search up and down. I'm not saying anything against anybody else. You don't need to search outside the deen for your solutions. Everything is inside of you. Literally, you've heard these ahadiths so many times. Imam Ali says the cure and the sickness lies inside of you. Lies inside of you. It's all there. So none of you changing your lens, dragging yourself to the musalla, or seeing the musalla as a medication of relief from you. It's up to you. Same salat, your lens, my lens. We said yesterday that the epitome of illallah is sujood. The tajalli, the manifestation of illallah is wujud, is sujood. Because nothing else at that moment matters. There's no one in front of me, I can't see a mirror, I can barely see my own face. Well, I said that. The actual physical act of sujood is the most humbling act there is for a human being. The one act that shaitan could not make himself do was sajda. I'll do anything else, but I can't do sajda. Even when Nabi Musa asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, can shaitan now ask for your forgiveness? Can he right the wrong he did? Is it possible for him to go back to you? Yes, absolutely. He can. How? He says, tell shaitan to go to the grave of Adam and do sajda in the grave of Adam. And he couldn't even do that. And maybe, ulama have said maybe. They say in Farsi, imkan darad, shayad, maybe. If Allah asked him to just stand there in front of the grave, maybe do ruku, possibly. But sujood, Allah, sujood, come on. You want me to rub my nose on dirt in front of Adam's grave? Meaning it's the ultimate act of humility. You can't get any lower. And by the way, it's mustahab to have your nose in dirt. For that very reason. When you're in that stage, illallah, you're at the peak of tawheed as a musalli and as someone who's worshiping God. And then you rise from that world of unity and wahdat. And now you enter once again the world of multiplicity. Now you're at the end of your salat. You're about to wrap up. Allahu Akbar, Allah, Musallah's folded. Now you go back to work, back to school, back to your weekend, let's say. Running to a majlis, you have to recite Marsiya. And you're back into the world. After tasting wahdat, you're now back into kathrat. And before that, Imam Khomeini says there is tashahhud. Tashahhud is very important. The initial testimony that we do, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, has been done already twice before tashahhud in a 4 rakat salah. Correct? He says there are levels to that testimony. The testimony you did in the adhan, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, and a beautiful adhan done, my young brother. Basi, his name is, yes? One loud salawat, please, for Basi. Imam Khomeini in his Adab al-Salat says that the first testimony that I bear witness there is no God but Allah, that's at the level of ta'abudi. It's devotional. Meaning what? I just claim that I love Allah and there is nobody but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, as you travel through salat and you go through the various acts of worship that we just talked about, the standing there, the qunut, the bending, the sujood, and now you rise up from all that being what? Being clean from everything, free of everything, light from everything. Your heart now belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No longer is it a devotional lip service or an offering we're giving Allah. Now it goes from ta'abudi to tahaqquqi. Now it's a realization. It's your aha moment. It's a removing of your veils. In the beginning it was, I bear witness there's no God but Allah. That's devotion. That's a slogan. That's no problem. Alhamdulillah, that's a beautiful statement. The more times you say it, the more tafheem happens. You incorporate inside of your heart. But the tashahud, initially that sentence is what? That statement claims that after going through the qiyam, ruku and sujood, now the veils that might have been there during the adhan are no longer there. Now you have your aha moment. Now truly, there's no God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You take that testimony and you enter back into kathrat in society. And in the process now, what was once now those enticing attachments, now seem like they're detachments to you. And that's how you end your salat. That realization is very, very important. You travel, even in this statement that there is no God but Allah, you travel from the concept of devotion to realization. And then he says, why is there a need? It's wajib, by the way, to include the Holy Prophet. It's a beautiful discussion. This is a salat for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why must we include the Prophet of Allah? And there are 2 points here that are very, very important for my young guys. Please sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He says, if you want to reach the level that salat should help you reach. Many of you have asked me. I've asked myself. We've been praying salat for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. This mi'raj, this migration, this hijrat. I haven't felt that yet. Surely, maybe at a moment now, you felt like you were drowning in the sea of Allah. Maybe during your ruku, maybe during one alhamd, maybe a qunut, maybe a tear dropped. But that hasn't happened yet. If you want it to happen, he says, you cannot reach that level without the help of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And by testifying that he is the last of prophets, you're actually asking him for help in this process. You're asking him to, I want to reach a level where 100% of my salat is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I can't do it without you. Now some people might call that shirk. The reality is the Quran and Allah himself now. In kuntum tuhibbuna Allah, fattabi'uni yuhibbukum Allah. That tell them, oh the Holy Prophet, or you say yourself, if you claim to love Allah, the Prophet says, then follow me. If you follow me, not only will you attain the love of Allah, you become the mahbub of Allah as well. He in turn loves you again. The condition, and God's place is condition. If you want to love me, the shart and the condition in my language of love is fattabi'uni, follow the Holy Prophet. Because now we take that verse and we apply it to our tashahud, where after we claim that Allah is one, then we also now announce there is no seal of prophethood except for that of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Why is that important? It's important. Last point, Masahib, it's important because Imam Khomeini says that even in this salat, 5 times a day, whether the Muslim world knows it or not, they're doing shafa'at 5 times a day. You're literally asking the Prophet, come with me to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And God is saying, you want to come to me? Don't come to me unless you have the Prophet of Allah beside you. If you want to achieve what you want to achieve. Not my words, Imam Khomeini's. You can take it up with him if you want. But the inclusion of the Prophet of Allah is very, very unique. God's telling us, this is the path that I want you to come to me. Yes, you can go to him directly. You've been to Hajj now, it's you in the Bayt of Allah, you feel the presence, that's fine. But Allah is saying one of the other journeys, وَابْتُغُوا إِلَيْهِ الْوَسِيلَةِ, seek a path that's nearest to me, and that is every single day. أَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. صَلُّوا عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَعَلَى Inshallah, tomorrow we talk about salam. We send peace upon ourselves tomorrow. What does that even mean? And how does that fit in this qiyam, ruku, sujood, tashahud? Hopefully, you've gotten there a little bit before that. If not, stay tuned for tomorrow. That's my shameless plug for tomorrow, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. And it was this salat that Imam Hussein asked Bibi Zainab, don't forget me in your salat. They spent 3 days in Karbala for Arba'een. We think that it was easy for them to enter Karbala and exit Karbala. The Zawar who just came back, ask yourself, the moment you entered the plains of Karbala, the moment you boarded that plane and your feet left the sands of Karbala, how difficult was that? You're physically sitting here, but your heart is still in the Haram of Abdullah al-Husayn. Ask the wife of Hussein. Ask the sister of Hussein. Ask the son of Hussein. The love they have for Imam Hussein was to the point where they wanted to go back to that very same moment of trauma, those same sands of Karbala that witnessed the shedding of the blood of Hussein. When Yazid told Imam Sajjad, I'm giving you your freedom, you tell me where you want to go, because outside the outskirts of Sham, the road is going to be divided into two. One path will go back to Medina, one path will go back to Karbala. Imam Sajjad says, let me ask my Aunt Zainab. He says to Pupi Amma Zainab, we've been given our azadi. We have two choices. We can be led back to Medina, or we can be led back to Karbala. The way the Maktal describes the way Zainab replied, without even a hesitation, Sajjad, take me back to Karbala. Arrived in Karbala 3 days now. They stayed there. Mourned, had their majalis now, grieved. The same place that Imam Hussein would tell Bibi Zainab the day of Ashura, don't be too upset. On this plains of Karbala now, our harams will be built. People will come from all corners of their globe to come and send their salams to me. People will walk to me. People will fly to me. People will swim to me. The image that I always talk about every single year is I've seen men with no legs dragging themselves to Karbala. There will be people here, and when you see them, he will tell Bibi Zainab, he will tell the Bani Asad tribe, tell your future generations that when my Zawar come to see me in Karbala, that Hussein sends his salams to them. And when you drink a glass of cold water, remember the thirst of your Mawla. For 3 days they stayed in Karbala. And when it was time to leave Karbala and go back to Medina, Bibi Zainab again gets the qafla ready. Everyone is ready to go. But the same Rabab that couldn't leave Sham is the same Rabab that couldn't leave Karbala. Sitting at the grave of her husband now. Rabab, Zainab saying, Rabab, let's go back to Medina now. It's time to go back to Medina now. She's looking up to Zainab. Hey, Bhabi, who do I go back to? I came with Sakina. I came with Ali Asghar. I came with my Aqaba Mawla Hussein. My Sakina's in Sham. My Ali Asghar and Mawla are here. They arrive in Medina. Just before they arrive in Medina, one last jumla. Imam Sajjad says to Bashir, Bashir, I heard that you're a poet. He says, yes, I'm a poet, Mawla. In the outskirts of Medina, now Imam Sajjad stops the qafila. Bashir, go inside Medina, go inside Yathrib, and announce that we have now come back from Karbala. Bashir goes inside the middle of the city. Says, Ya Ahle Yathrib, O people of Medina, Medina's not worthy to live in anymore. Hussein has been killed. His body is lying there in Karbala, buried in blood and buried in dirt. His head was paraded from city to city to city. Imam Sajjad, his son, is on the outskirts of Medina now. After hearing Bashir, everyone comes running out, hitting their heads, crying. They all run towards Imam Sajjad. They're all gathered outside the tent. My Muslim fourth Imam slowly comes out of his tent. He sees the people of Medina. He begins to cry. The people of Medina begin to cry. At that moment now, he describes what happens. He describes what happened to Hussein, what happened to Ali Akbar, what happened to Abbas, what happened to Ali Asghar. And this one woman is sitting there listening to Imam Sajjad, listening to Imam Sajjad, almost as if she was waiting for him to finish, waiting for him to finish. When our fourth Imam was done, this woman walks forward. Yabna Rasulullah, answer me one question. When Hussein was being killed on Asri Ashur, where was my Abbas? Hey Ummul Baneen, your Abbas gave his life in the loyalty of Hussein. Matam Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. ملتی ہی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں، 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 ملتی ہی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں۔ بے گورو کفن بھائی، بے گورو کفن بھائی، ہم شیر سفر میں، ملتی ہی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں، ملتی ہی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں۔ بے گورو کفن بھائی، بے گورو کفن بھائی، ہم شیر سفر میں، ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں، ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں، ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں۔ حق فاطمہ زہرا کا غضب جس نے کیا ہے، حق فاطمہ زہرا کا غضب جس نے کیا ہے، وہ دوست بھلا کیا ہے، وہ دوست بھلا کیا ہے، پیغمبر کی نظر میں، ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں، ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر دہر میں ملتے نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں حق فاطمہ زہرا کا غضب جس نے کیا ہے حق فاطمہ زہرا کا غضب جس نے کیا ہے وہ دوست بھلا کیا ہے وہ دوست بھلا کیا ہے پیغمبر کی نظر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں 6 ماہ کے بچے کو بھی نیزے پہ چڑھایا 6 ماہ کے بچے کو بھی نیزے پہ چڑھایا کیا چھوڑا ہے امت نے کیا چھوڑا ہے امت نے میرے بھائی کے گھر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر 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 میں خاموش چلی جاؤں بھلا شام میں کیسے خاموش چلی جاؤں بھلا شام میں کیسے شبیر کا لاشا ہے شبیر کا لاشا ہے میری راہ گزر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر 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 میں عابد نے کہا خون یوں ہی روتا رہوں گا عابد نے کہا خون یوں ہی روتا رہوں گا پھپھی کی اسیری نے پھپھی کی اسیری نے کیے زخم جگر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں بے گورو کفن بھائی بے گورو کفن بھائی ہم شیر سفر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر 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 میں خاموش چلی جاؤں بھلا شام میں کیسے خاموش چلی جاؤں بھلا شام میں کیسے شبیر کا لاشا ہے شبیر کا لاشا ہے میری راہ گزر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال سی دہر میں ملتی نہیں مثال ایسی دہر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں ترسی تھی خواتین ملاقات کو جس سے ترسی تھی ملاقات کو جس سے زینب سر عریا ہے زینب سر عریا ہے اسی کوفہ شہر میں ملتی ہی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں ملتی ہی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال الوداع میں ملتی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں 6 ماہ کے بچے کو بنے پہ چڑھایا 6 ماہ کے بچے کو بنے پہ چڑھایا کیا چھوڑا ہے امت نے کیا چھوڑا ہے امت نے میرے بھائی کے گھر میں ملتی ہی نہیں کوئی مثال ایسی دہر میں ملتی ہی نہیں کوئی مثال یا حسین 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 وہ عابد بیمار تھا وہ عابد بیمار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور مصطفیٰ کی بیٹیاں مولا حق یا حسین مولا حق یا حسن یا حسین یا حسین یا اللہم صلی علی محمد وعلی محمد.
توجہ زیارت. السلام علیک یا ابا عبداللہ السلام علیک یا ابن رسول اللہ السلام علیک یا ابن امیر المومنین وابن سید الوسیین السلام علیک یا ابن فاطمة الزہراء بنت رسول اللہ ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي غريب الغرباء السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس ونيس النفوس ومدفون بأرض طوس راضي بالقدر والقضاء ابن موسى الرضا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وزهورك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.